Hey guys, I'm back again. Today we're looking at this Poulan PPB250E string trimmer. This thing has a bunch of stuff wrong with it. It needs a carb rebuild, new fuel lines, and a new ignition module. Now I don't know if it's pronounced Poulan, 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 or whatever. I just call it Poulan. Yeah, I know, I should do the ignition module first. But since I'm still waiting for that to come in, we're going to do the carb and the fuel lines today. The first thing we need to do is remove the air filter. The cover just pops off and then you can pull the filter element out. Then we need a 4mm Allen wrench to remove the two carb bolts. Once those are out, I'm also going to remove the fuel tank. That's another two 4mm bolts. This way we can take the whole thing off as one assembly. Before we can remove this, we need to disconnect the throttle linkage. With all the bolts out, you can swing the carb down and disconnect the linkage. And here's the whole fuel assembly on the bench. The fuel lines on mine were in some pretty sad shape. I ended up just breaking them off. You want to make note of where all of these lines are connected so you can reconnect the new lines the same way later. This is the rebuild kit that we'll be using. It's a RB142. If you look at the other videos on my channel, I'll have a video explaining how to look up what rebuild kit you need for your particular carb. Here's the carb in the vise. We're going to remove these 4 Phillips head screws from the base plate. On this carb, all 4 of the screws are the same size and length, so you don't need to worry about putting them back in the same spot. But on some other carbs, you might have different length screws and you'll have to keep track of them. Now we can lift off the base plate. That black thing that's stuck to the bottom of it is the fuel pump diaphragm. We'll be replacing that with a new one from the rebuild kit. The residual fuel left in this carb was really sticky. It was almost like it was coated with honey. Next, I'll flip the carb over to the other side. This is the metering side. There are 2 screws here that we have to remove. These screws are shorter than the screws from the fuel pump side. Next, I'll use a watch pry tool to pop off the cover. This will expose the metering diaphragm. The diaphragm on mine was really stuck down, so I had to kind of scrape it off. We'll be replacing this part with one from the rebuild kit as well. The old one was really dried out, almost like cardboard. It should be flexible. Make a note on this part that the side with the larger metal disc goes down facing the carb. There's also a gasket stuck to it. The gasket goes on the side with the big disc facing the carb. Here's a close-up of the internals. The way this works is that diaphragm moves and actuates this lever here. The lever is connected to the needle. When it lifts up the needle, it lets fuel in. We need to remove this Phillips screw here to take out the needle assembly. Make sure to hold the lever down while removing the screw, as there's a spring under there that could yeet out. There is a replacement spring in the rebuild kit, just in case you lose it though. I'll use a pair of tweezers to remove the spring, and then the lever assembly, and then the needle itself. The needle has a little rubber tip on the end of it. That's what seals off the fuel flow. This long oval part is called a Welch plug. The rebuild kit comes with a new one, but I never replace them. You pretty much have to destroy the old one to get it out, and you need a special tool to install the new one. I will just leave this guy alone. Then I'm going to spray out the carb with carb cleaner spray. You want to get the cleaner into all of the ports, but be careful. Some of those ports have check valves inside of them that could be damaged with too much pressure. You could also dunk it overnight in carb cleaner or put it in one of those ultrasonic cleaners. This one isn't too bad. I just need to dissolve the residual fuel sludge, so I'm comfortable with just gently spraying it down. I'm also going to spray the cleaner directly into the inlet fittings. You should see fuel coming out of one of the ports when you do this. Then I'll spray down the base plate and the diaphragm cover as well. Once we're satisfied that everything is clean, we can take it back to the workbench, put it back in the vise, and start putting the new parts in. We'll start with the spring. It just kind of sets in that little recess there. Then we can drop in the new needle. Be careful not to damage the tip on it, as that's what seals off the fuel flow. And then the new lever assembly. The part with the notch will kind of clip onto the needle valve. The spring goes under the part with the little dimple on it. Then I'll slide the shaft over so everything lines up. Now we can reinstall that Phillips screw. Now don't over torque this, you just want to get it a little tight. If you strip out the threads, then the carb is going to be ruined. I'm also pressing down on the lever to make sure that nothing gets bound up. You want to make sure that everything actuates smoothly. Before going any further, we need to check the height of the metering lever. If it's not set right, you won't be getting the correct amount of fuel. Now there is a special tool for this, but on these C1U carbs, you can just use a straight edge. You want the lever to just be touching the straight edge. If you end up having to bend it up, don't use too much force, because you don't want to be forcing the needle down and deform the tip on it. If you have to bend it down, you have to be conscious of the hinge that the lever pivots on. If you bend it too much, you can open up the hinge, and then it won't work right. I just used my fingernail. This one just needed to go a hair up. Now we can install the gasket, and then the new metering diaphragm goes on top of that, with the side with the larger disc facing down. And then the cover plate. Now the same here, don't over torque those screws. I like to get each one seated and then go back and forth until they're both snug. Once those screws are snug, we can flip the carb over and start work on the fuel pump side. This part here is a filter screen. The rebuild kit comes with a replacement one, but this one's pretty clean. Usually if there's nothing wrong with the screen, I just leave the old one in and don't bother replacing it. This side is kind of the opposite. The diaphragm goes on first, and then the gasket. And then the end plate. This part has two locating pins on it to get it in the right spot. Be careful you don't poke the diaphragm installing it. And then the 4 screws. Here I like to do a crisscross pattern, similar to when installing lug nuts on a wheel, to spread out the torque. And once that's done, we have a rebuilt carb. Now before installing it, I'm going to do a pressure test. If you look at my other videos, I have a full video on how to use the pressure tester. Basically, we're going to pump the inlet line up to 7 psi and make sure it holds pressure. This one is holding pressure, so we know the needle valve is sealing properly. Now we can move on to our next problem, which is these fuel lines. They're just falling apart. This one here wouldn't break off, so what I did was I cut it off with some side cutters flush to the tank, and then pushed the remaining part through the hole into the tank. Now we can dump out the tank and get all of those pieces out of there. This guy is the fuel filter. It actually looks like it's still good. Here's all of our old fuel lines. What I'm going to do is lay out the new fuel lines and then cut the pieces so that they're a little bit longer than the old ones. You want at least an extra couple of inches. Then you want to cut the end that you're going to fit into the fuel tank at an angle. Make this cut at least an inch long. It'll make feeding the lines through a lot easier. I also put some oil on the line to act as a lube. Here I have the tank mounted in the vise, and I'm going to feed the fuel line with that angled cut end through the hole in the bottom of the tank. These are going to be a tight fit. These tanks rely on the fuel line itself to create the seal for that hole. Once it's started, I'll reach in from the top with a pair of forceps and pull the line through. You can find these in the fishing section. They're like thin needle nose pliers with a locking mechanism. This hose I was having trouble pulling through, so I ended up flipping the tank over and then I put some more oil on the line. That did it, then I was able to pull it through. Then you want to cut off that angle cut to make it square, and then we'll install the fuel filter. A trick here is to heat up the line with a heat gun first. You don't want to go crazy, don't get it too hot, don't melt it. Even then, I struggled getting this filter on. I ended up having to use the forceps to pull it on the rest of the way. Be careful if using the forceps that you don't tear the line. Then I'll tuck the filter back down in there and we can move on to the return line. It's the same procedure here. Cut it on an angle, lube it up, feed it through the hole. Now the return line only needs to stick up an inch or so in the tank. Make sure it's sticking up past your angle cut so that it makes a good seal. Now from the factory, a lot of these have this little fitting attached to the end. It doesn't connect to anything in the tank, and most of the time I just leave it out. So here I slid the screws through the carb to hold it to the air filter housing while I attach the fuel lines. The inlet line ended up being a little bit long, so I cut it down. We'll get that attached to the carb here. Next up is the return line. On this engine, the return line goes to the primer bulb. The primer bulb will have two fittings on it, a long one and a short one. The long one is the pressure side. That's what connects to the fuel tank. The shorter fitting is the suction side. That one connects to the carburetor here. This one was also a little long, so I cut it down too. And then I attached the other end to the short primer bulb fitting. So now all of our lines are connected and we can reinstall this on the engine. Here I'm going to take the fuel assembly and kind of slide it in place. We'll attach the fuel tank first, making sure not to pinch any of the fuel lines or the throttle linkage. This uses the two shorter 4mm bolts. Then we'll reconnect the throttle linkage. This just kind of hooks in here. Now we can tilt the carb back up against the engine and thread in the two mounting screws. You also want to be careful here not to pinch any of the fuel lines. Next, we'll reinstall the air filter. This one was pretty clean, so I'm just going to reuse it. And then snap the air filter cover back on, and then we're done. So that's it for this video. Be sure to stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to replace the ignition module. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.